live.
Live, Evie. Say hi. Say hi. Well, we were going to go outside to do this. I posted about this a couple days ago. We were going to go outside and do this, and then I walked outside, and it's freezing here. I don't know when that happened. Maybe it's the storms rolling in, but we threw on our sweatshirts. We went out there and we realized not only is it freezing, it is super windy. So we're inside. Evie is teething. We have had quite a week. I think if you tuned in last time, you heard about how we had to take her to the emergency room. She had a horrible virus, and now she's cutting a tooth down here and both of her top teeth. And she already has two, and she's only 6.5 months old. So we're not really sure exactly why all these teeth are coming in all at once, but this poor girl's had a lot going on. And she has a new outfit she wants to show you. Say, this is my new outfit. She has hip dysplasia, mild hip dysplasia in her left hip. And so we were told, if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably heard some of this story, but we were told by a doctor that she was going to have surgery and be, yeah? Dad, did you say dad on Facebook Live? Oh my gosh. So anyway, we were told she'd have to have surgery and be in this cast, a spica cast from like her chest to her toes, and we were just devastated. Then we got a second opinion, and another doctor said, let's try the Pavlik harness and then the rhino brace. So this is the second phase of this season of our life with her, and it's working so far, so that's exciting. So this is her new outfit, and she can actually get baths. She's gonna have her first bath in 7 weeks in like 30 minutes, so that's exciting. Don't spit up. Oh, she's spitting up. That's fine. So anyway, I have some questions that I need to answer for some photographers that have asked questions on the other Facebook Lives that we've done. And it's all about locations and lighting. And I'm just going to hold her as long as she'll let me, just because I miss her when I'm working. So some of the questions that we had were about very specific types of lighting. Some were about very specific types of location issues. And what I've found, what I've realized is some of these things are going to be a little hard to explain when I'm just speaking to you, but I have taken 8 questions from our list, and we've compiled a list from a lot of our Facebook groups, our educational Facebook groups, and we've combined questions that you left on the last Facebook Live, and we put them in this huge document. So I use Evernote. Here's a quick tip. For all my like thoughts and the education side of my business, and for speaking and blogging, everything is kind of stored in Evernote. And Evernote, I have all these different notebooks. Anyway, if you need a way to store your thoughts online, Evernote is a great solution. So anyway, in Evernote, our team has like this ongoing list of all the questions that we have been asked about lighting and locations. And the reason why this is important to us is because we are desperately trying to figure out the best way to help photographers who cannot figure out how to create a brand that they love shooting in the locations that they have to shoot in. And the reason why we're excited about that is because a lot of people look at us and they're like, well, Caitlin, you've been shooting for, 8-9 years, and you charge $8,000 to $10,000 a wedding, and so you just get to shoot wherever you want. They're all, you always shoot in really fancy locations. And that could not be further from the truth. Just a couple weekends ago, we shot a wedding at a community hall, like a community center. It wasn't this elaborate country club of Virginia. It wasn't like this amazing, Pippin Hill is beautiful, and we do shoot there probably once a year, maybe twice a year if we're lucky. But that's not normal for us. Like we might have high-end prices, but we don't shoot in high-end venues. And I feel like that's something that I have come to actually really love about our business, because it means that I am constantly being challenged on how to make a dark church and a preschool classroom work as a getting ready room, or how do I make this girl's getting ready at her parents' house, and it's beautiful, but there's wood paneling in the living room, and her bedroom is painted navy blue. How in the world do you make that look bright and airy? So I love that about our business. Even on days when it's a challenge, I think it's a challenge because we're supposed to help other photographers figure out how to make it work for their business. So we're coming up with all of this content, and we're trying to ask you for questions so that in the future, like late fall, so that we can offer you an educational resource that's going to help you in a really big way. And so that's coming up in November. So if you have more questions, we want to hear from you. And I actually have, I don't know, is it already on the link? Did you already put the link up there?
Yes.
So there's a link that we have created some content. When I say we, I mean me. Michael and the other parts of our team, my sister, and we have created this email that we wanted to send out. And I wanted it to be perfect and pretty and like really perfectly styled. But you know what? We've had a crazy week. She's in a new brace. Last week she was sick. So I've written all the content and I'm just going to send it to you in an email. It's not pretty. It's far from perfect, but it's really good content. I basically sat down last week in the midst of all of her health problems, and I started writing out like, what is it about getting into a location that's not great? What do I think about in my head when I arrive at that location? So when I show up to the girl's house, to the bride's house, and it is dark, what formula do I use to produce a bright and airy blog post that you'll see later? Because you don't see the behind the scenes. You only see the good stuff. So I tried to take all those thoughts and I put them in an email, and I want to send all those secrets to you. So basically, I took those ideas and I wrote down 3 steps to how to deal with lousy locations. How to take lousy locations and turn it into images that you're proud of. Because hopefully for some of you, you will outgrow the lousy location phase of your business, but then some of you may be like me and you're still shooting in locations that are less than ideal all the time. And not all the time, but a lot of the time. So anyway, I'm excited about that. So click the link, go ahead and enter your email address. We'll send you an email this afternoon. It actually might, we'll send it in the next 30 minutes? Hopefully.
Let us know if
we
you don't
stay
get it.
organized. We're going to send it in the next few minutes once this is done. But we'll send you all those tips that I've written out. And I'm sorry it's not in some pretty PDF, but it doesn't matter. It's still good information. I think it's going to help you. So anyway, I have questions to answer. I think I have 8 of them. I chose these 8 from about 80. There's so many questions, and we're going to keep all those questions, and they're going to help us build out our course that we're working on. But for right now, I can only take about 8 at a time because she's gnawing on my finger. So the first question is, Michael's going to read it to me.
Yep. Do you have any strategies for locations that are busy, like the beach near the pier, for example, especially in the summer? There are so many people.
That's a good question. So
the Brooklyn Bridge.
Brooklyn Bridge. Okay, so that's a great example. We, some of you may be up north. You're from New York, and you have clients who are like, or maybe you're in DC. DC is the worst with this. It's like, oh, we want a picture with the Capitol in the background, or we want a picture with all the monuments, and we don't want any tourists. And that is just, it's really almost impossible. So what I have found, my example, Michael would say the Brooklyn Bridge because that's probably one of our hardest situations. The first thing you could do is to show up in the morning. Yes. You can show up in the morning at sunrise. That's what we did recently. You getting a little crazy. Maybe you should go off and sit to the side. Are you going to be good? No? Okay, we'll try again. So, sunrise session. We did that at the Brooklyn Bridge. It cut down on probably 50% of the biking traffic. The second way that you can make this better, and I talk about this in that the secret tips email that I want to send you, it is all about taking your clients and using them as a way to block distractions in the background. So on the Brooklyn Bridge, for example, I would pull my clients towards the camera, making my clients look bigger, the bridge looks smaller, but my clients are taking up more of the frame, still getting the iconic image in the background, but I'm using their bodies to block all the people running. So if you take your shot from way far back and your clients are really tiny in the foreground, you're not using their bodies, you have no way to block distractions. So in the idea of I think you're done. I think you're done. Okay, let's hand you off. Hold on. There you go. We had a good run. And for those of you who've asked about Evie, now you know she's alive and well. She's doing great. The other tip about hiding people, like for example the Brooklyn Bridge or the beach, would be that you have to start thinking strategically about the way that you're cropping. So your clients may say like, oh, I just want that long beach shot. Well, that's going to be really hard. What if you just had a little bit of the angle of the water, but you shot vertically and you started to crop out the distractions? So I try to find an empty space where I can have a little bit of margin on this side of my couple and just a little bit of margin on that side. I'll shoot vertically, and then I'll use my clients to block whoever's in the background. And this takes a lot of strategy. It takes a lot of hard work because a lot of photographers, especially when you're nervous, and I'll just be honest, when we did our Brooklyn Bridge engagement session, this was a couple that was getting married at Pippin Hill. The bride had been super, super sweet in emails, but we had never met. So I was a little nervous to meet her, and she turned out to be just the most amazing person. But I could tell her groom was a little nervous, as he should be. Like, we get up at 6 a.m. and he has to be a model in front of all these bikers in the middle of New York City. So I was nervous, they were a little bit nervous, and I remember thinking, like, I have got to be on my A game because this is a hard location, it's crowded, and my clients have expectations. So for me, I think the hardest part is being relaxed enough to think through the process that I just told you. So being relaxed enough to think, okay, I've got to block that person in the background with their bodies, and then I'm going to wait for that person to walk, and I'm going to shoot vertically. So I have a little bit of the beach or a little bit of the Brooklyn Bridge. I can still see the arch, but it might not be super wide, but you can still tell where they are, and it's a great portrait. So some photographers would say, oh, just shoot it and then clone out everyone later. You could do that, or you could take the approach of being more candid, like, well, this is how it looked, like there were just people everywhere. But sometimes the people walking in the background with hot pink strollers or neon green bikes, it's just not going to look good in the gallery. So I'm a fan of being strategic and using body blocking as a way to crop out those distractions. So
Tracy did my job and shared the link to that engagement session.
Oh, good.
So everybody can look at that.
Perfect. John and Kate?
I don't remember.
Yes, that should be the only. We might have shot there twice, but you probably got the right one. Thank you, Stacey. That's so great. Stacey or Tracy?
Tracy.
Tracy, Stacey, but your name it just kind of all flows together. Thank you for doing that, though. The next question is,
I struggle with lighting because I don't want my subjects to always have sun right behind them, yet when I turn them with the sun to the side, they get horrible highlights and shadows on their faces. Mm-hmm. Is shade the only way to go here?
Okay, that's great. I'm actually sweating a little bit because I'm really excited about what we're talking about. And I like this because I think there's a common misconception with lighting that some people just get magical light and other people just never seem to find it. And the truth is that everyone can have magical light. You just have to know how to control it. And you need to learn a term called light wrapping. So what I mean by light wrapping is I try to take the backlighting and wrap it as far around my client's face as I can without it touching their face. That means that I'm getting the sun off to the side out of my frame, not creating highlight and shadows on the face, so the light is hitting right about here. So maybe they're looking at each other, but the light's here and it's nice and glowy, but you're avoiding haze, and you're also avoiding that harsh light on the face. And the reason why I think a lot of people don't pick up on this is because when you're actually shooting and trying to find that sweet spot, you're talking about the sun being here versus the sun being here. And that degree of change is very, very small. So your margin of error is very small. You can very quickly overdo it and the sun is hitting the cheek, or you could very quickly get to a place where the sun is right behind their heads and it's so hazy, and then you just give up. You're like, oh my gosh. Some people can find glow, but I guess I just never have good light when I do sessions. Truth is, you do have good light. It's just a matter of managing it and controlling it. So when you talk about, gosh, do I need to just give up and go in the shade? No, but there are some other factors that come into play. For example, if it is 6 p.m. and the sun sets at 7:30 and you're shooting because people told you like 2 hours before sunset is glowy light, that's true. But if you're shooting at 6 and the sun is setting closer to 8, 6 o'clock is still going to be kind of harsh. So at that time frame, I would rather have that sunlight coming through some trees, breaking up through the leaves. That brings me to another point, which I think I get to answer in another question. So I'm going to keep going so that I have time for all of them. But what you're asking is really good stuff. That's the stuff you need to be asking in order to show up to your sessions and know how to transform your images. So don't shy away from asking those questions. The next one is...
what are some of your tips for finding great light in areas that have dense trees? I live in an area with a lot of evergreen type trees and really struggle with finding an area that matches the light and bright look of all my other pictures.
Okay, this may not work, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to ask Michael to pan. Can you show him like the backyard here?
Oh, our lack of grass?
Yeah, don't look at our grass, guys. It's a new house. We're working on the grass. So if you look at those trees in the backyard, that's what I like to call a black hole. Like even when it is super sunny, When it's super sunny, you still cannot see any. Michael just ran into the baby swing. This is real life. When the light comes through those trees, you cannot see any light. There's no glow. So if I was standing there looking at sunset, I'm like, I see the glowy light on the top of the trees, but when I look at the body of the tree, there's literally, it's just darkness. And so I feel like that's what a lot of people deal with. When you say, like, I just have these dense forests that I cannot seem to get any good light. My suggestion to you would be to do what we do when we're shooting on our property, is to find the peaks of the forest, the ends of the forest. So a lot of times you could have a line of trees, but sometimes there are lines of trees and then there are some outcroppings of a few trees over here that don't have thick forest behind them. Or maybe there's just one or two trees here that are apart from the forest, and you think like, well, that's not very appealing visually, but stepping away from the forest and allowing the sun to go through those trees instead of the black hole will allow your images to actually have glow. So what you saw in our backyard, you will never see, actually that's not true. I did do a shoot back there once. I'm not going to tell you what shoot it was, but I had to edit those images probably for 2 hours longer than I normally would. It normally takes me like 30 minutes to edit an engagement session, but this particular shoot, it took me 2 hours because the light was so confusing. So if you're shooting with that black hole, like no ambient light coming through the trees and it just looks dark, that's going to be, I understand, that's frustrating. So if you were in my situation, this is what I would tell you to do. Instead of using our backyard that I just showed you, I would take you around a little further on our yard where the trees start to separate just a little bit. And that could be that you're at a park, and instead of shooting with, with the thick forest behind you, you find just a few little smaller, shorter trees for the light to come through. And it may not pop out at you. It may not be the location that you're naturally drawn to, because most people look at our backyard and think, oh, let's shoot in the field. That's pretty, right? Except for the dead grass. Let's shoot in the wide open field. But I have to think through my mind, no, because the background is going to be dark, and I don't want that. I'm going to pull them further away from the trees, find some areas where the light's coming through the trees at a little bit more of a lighter look. I'm going to pull them away, and that's where I'm going to shoot. So don't worry, you're not crazy. It's not that you can't find the good light in the dense forest. Nobody can. But I think other people in your situations, they could be shooting in a parking lot with just a few trees and the sun coming through. They're not getting lost in the deep, dark forest. They're staying closer to the edge of the forest. So I hope that's helpful. I have more thoughts on that, but I'm going to have to share that later because I think I have like 5 more questions. So
4 more. Number 4.
Oh, we're doing good.
When you can't find ideal light and you're faced with absolute full sun or the entire opposite, dense shade, which do you choose and why? Is it always better to choose sun rather than shade where a flash would be needed?
That's a great question. So this is going to sound like a cop-out, but it's not. When you say it's either harsh light or dense shade, in my mind I'm thinking, I bet you there's actually an in-between that you're not aware of. I bet there's actually a location in that where you're talking about bright sun, dense shade. There is somewhere where the light is seeping in just a little, or maybe you don't recognize it as good light, but there's a place where you can get a little bit of glow and a little bit of shade. Even here, like for example, when you're shooting on our land and it's super bright out in the field, but if you get people back into those trees that I showed you, it's going to be a black hole because that's going to be dense shade. That's going to be really, really look overcast, blue skin, green skin. But I know from practice that even though that seems like there's no option, it's either bright sun or that, I know that I can get creative and find other ways to let light seep into my lens without being overpowering. It means that I have to be creative with my location. So instead of showing up to a park and saying I'm going to shoot in this field, it means that maybe I'm looking around the parking lot and looking for low-lying branches on trees. Maybe it's looking for some flower beds where I can shoot through some of the shrubbery to lessen the impact of the light on the back of my clients' heads. It's really hard, I'll be honest, it is really hard to convince your couples, hey, we're at this plantation home, but I'm not going to shoot any pictures of you at the plantation home. I'm going to keep you in the parking lot. But sometimes I have to make those decisions because the lighting is not good anywhere else. So for you, if you say you're like, well, great, Caitlin, that's wonderful, but I can't find that in between yet. I'm not super advanced. I'm just getting started. What would you do if when you walked to a session, you just saw bright light and dark shade? In my opinion, I think that it would all have to do with the background. Because if you're shooting with your clients with harsh sunlight, and it's just nothing in the background except harsh sunlight, and so they're really going to seem overexposed in the background, then that I would probably choose the dark shade. If the dark shade is so dark that it doesn't even have good light, then I would definitely avoid that, because if you have dark shadows under their eyes or in their eye sockets, and you don't have good highlight and shadow on the rest of their body, then your editing is just going to be a nightmare. So I think it depends. I don't think you can look at that as black and white. I think every situation is different. And I wish I had been, whatever shoot that was, whoever asked that question, I wish I was with you at that shoot so that I could kind of walk you through what my mind would have processed. But I don't think it's that black and white. I don't think it's that clear cut.
Number 5.
Hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 5, we just moved from open desert to thick pine forest in the mountains. I'm working to make my sessions consistent, but the light and shade is so different here. How do you find the right light in such different locations to keep your style consistent, because you shoot all over and always look consistent?
That's really good. Well, so we created a 21 module course on consistency. And so I wish I could just tell you all the things right now, but these are some tips that might help. Consistency comes in all ways, shapes, and forms. So it's not just about finding good light. That's going to help you. If you find good light and you find your type of light in every location, that's going to be awesome. But it's not just about light. It's not just about editing. And it's not just about curating. It's kind of a combination of all of those things. And so for me, if I were in your shoes, I would think about, okay, what is it about my work that makes it look like me? You know, did your work only look like you because you used to shoot in the desert? I don't think so. I think the desert was a common location, but we need to think about your actual images. Did you like that they were bright and airy? Well, if you shot on my land where we got some dense forest, we could still give you light and airy. We just have to recreate the way that we think about finding our locations. Where your image is bright and colorful, and you're editing that way, and now maybe you're in a location where you're really tempted to make them look more filmy, which is totally fine, but you have to recognize that if you start to tweak your editing, then your consistency from your previous location is just not going to flow very well. So when I think about my work, I know that my work needs to be joyful, it needs to be crisp and fresh and bright, and somewhat colorful. I think that if I started stripping all the color out of my images, I'd get some emails about that. So for you, I think you should look back at your work in the desert and think about, what did my work look like here, and what elements about it do I want to keep? Because I loved creamy skin tones. I like bright and airy. I like that all my clients wore pastel colored outfits, and now I'm in the mountains and they're all wearing plaid, navy blue, and leather. I don't know. But there's so many things that go into making sure you have continuity to your brand, and you can't blame it on location, because you're right. We've shot all over the place. Our Scotland engagement session looks like a Charlottesville engagement session. The wedding we shot in Italy, those images, while they were epic, they still have the same look and feel as weddings that we shot at a plantation outside of DC. So when you think about your style, try to think about it as, let me look at my images and what components I want to keep, and not focus so much on that the background has everything to do with it, because there's always a way to find your style. You will have to recreate yourself in some way, shape, or form, because you're in a brand new place, you're in a brand new location, but don't let that define you. Just because you're not in the desert doesn't mean that you can't find who you are in your new location that you're living. So I have a lot more that I could say about that too, but I know that how long I've been speaking for a while, but I make sure, whoever asked that question, make sure you download, or like just click the link that we put in the top, and make sure you download our email that we want to send you with secrets about lighting and locations, because I think that will help you as well. It's a lengthy email with really great stuff, but don't get scared off by the link. I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of you. So was that the last one?
Nope.
Oh, we got another one.
3 more.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. I'm going to go fast.
How do you find good, clean light when you have lots of trees and brown leaves all around?
Oh, brown leaves. So clean light, what they mean by that is light that allows you to have really clean skin tones so you don't have color cast all over your clients. So if you were shooting and you get back to editing and all of a sudden you see green under here, you probably live on the East Coast, or you live somewhere maybe on the Pacific Northwest where there's just trees, green, grass everywhere. whoever was living in the desert, I envy you because it's so beautiful there, and you don't have to deal with green color cast all the time like we do. This is what I recommend. We have to start thinking about light as two different parts. So there's a main light source and there's a secondary light source. And a lot of times photographers only notice the main light source, and they don't pay attention to the fact that there's got to be a secondary light source that's going to cleanly light their client's face. So for me, the way that I find clean light is I'm always looking for access to the sky. So the sun could be beaming in through these windows, which it does most afternoons. But even though the sun's beaming in through these windows and I can see a glow like on the back of Michael's head or the back of my head, I can't shoot with that glow on the back of the head just because I see the glow. You can't shoot like that. Why? Because there are no windows over here. There's no secondary light that's going to illuminate or expose for my face coming from this angle. So a lot of times people will put their clients in situations at parks or at farms or downtown area where they sit them in good light on the back of their head, and they never look for access to the sky to have natural clean light filling them from the other side. And that is the most common problem I have found with people who have huge lighting problems. So hopefully that's helpful. And I can explain more. I'm hoping we do more of this, but that's something that when we create this lighting course, lighting locations, that's what I want to focus on a lot, because I think you guys need a lot of examples. Because I could tell you that, but then you'll show up to a location and be like, yeah, but I don't know what to do right here. I don't know what to do with that church I shot in last weekend. So I'm trying to think through the best way to teach you that from my perspective.
Number 7, how do you make the most out of mini sessions where it's at one location?
Okay, so you're shooting at one location and you have 20 minutes. And this kind of goes into our posing evolution content where we talk about you find your spot and you stay there. So I actually encourage photographers that if you find good light on a wedding day, you maximize as much as you can in that one location. So that would mean that you're changing things like the lens and light that you're using. There is a fly in here. We have That's gross. I was going to say, are we the only one that have flies in our house? They just showed up randomly a couple days ago, and we need to kill them. So what was I saying? So the lens you're using, if you change your lenses, your images are going to look a little bit different. But maybe you only have one portrait lens, and that's totally fine. That's all you need right now. If you have one portrait lens, say you're shooting with a 50 millimeter, then what you can do is that you can have a family, they're interacting, they're looking at each other, they're laughing, and then they're smiling at you. So that's changing the pose and the emotion. Now you could change composition. So instead of shooting them vertically and really, really close up, you're going to back up a little bit, and you're going to shoot them a little bit wider with maybe the field over in the background, and they're still laughing and they're smiling at you. There are so many different ways that you can change up an image without having to do location swaps. So I don't know if maybe you haven't seen this, but if you haven't, the Posing Evolution mini guide that we have in our store, it explains this entire process. It's $12.99, several pages of just all of our posing content when it comes to finding locations, staying in one place, changing and adding variety to your images in a lot of different ways. We could shoot an entire session right here, like in our living room. Yes, it's nice that we have big windows, but on this couch and in this space, I know that I could come up with a whole gallery full of ideas. And it comes from having a system that you filter your thoughts through when you're actually shooting. So again, that's a great question. I'm going to keep diving into that as we do more of these Facebook Lives and these Q&As. Was that the last one?
Nope, one more.
Oh, one more. Okay, what's the last one?
Light suggestions for rainy days.
Okay, so kind of like today, kind of like all next week, there's so many storms, I feel like, happening all across the country. A lot of you are going to be shooting weddings in the rain. This is my best piece of advice. Do not believe the lie that when it's overcast, you can shoot anywhere, because that's not true. If it's just lightly overcast, it's really not true, because the thinner the clouds, the more angle the sun is actually hitting your clients. Now, if you have really thick clouds, even though you can look at the sky and it's hard to tell like exactly where the sun is, like if I'm looking through our windows right now, the sun is somewhere over there because the clouds get brighter, but it's hard to tell. Even though it's hard to tell, if I was outside right now and I turned around a circle, you'd be able to see my eye sockets get darker and then my eyesight gets brightened up as I was twirling around looking at the way the light was hitting me. You want to make sure that you're shooting exact opposite that you would on a sunny day. You want your clients to face towards the sun. You want that sun and that light to be coming through the clouds and hitting them on the face so that you don't have any darkness in their eyes, under their nose, under their chin. You're going to have save editing time. You're going to save on skin retouching because everything's going to look brighter and airier. So on those rainy days, make sure you recognize that overcast doesn't mean you can shoot anywhere. Last but not least, the answer to the last question about using one location and maximizing it, the posing evolution is going to help with that as well, because when you go out, like for example, we did a workshop here and it poured down rain and I was heartbroken, but I can't change the fact that it rained. So we shot on the porch, we shot inside, and we did as many different combinations as we could think of in those locations because that's all we had. And so I think that once you get in your mind like, okay, I'm not bound by the fact that it's raining. If you give me one porch, I can transform this wedding day. Look at this is kind of embarrassing to say, but Patrick and Anna Maria, that wedding was from years ago, but I did all their portraits on one porch. Bridal party, the bride, the groom, bride and groom together, all those portraits were done on one porch and I was standing out in the pouring rain. So if you need some inspiration, go look at that wedding on my blog, Patrick and Anna Maria. Anna Maria is one word. So anyway, look that up. That can be some inspiration for you for rainy days. I've been talking a long time. I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, Caitlin, when are you going to stop? So I'm just going to leave you with this. This was 8 questions of 80 plus questions that are in my saved Evernote file, and I want to make sure that we answer them as many as we can leading up to the build out of this new educational resource. So we're going to do this again. Maybe next week we'll take a break from Q&A and we'll do some other content that I have saved for you. But I still want to hear from you. So best thing you could do to get in touch with us is to go ahead and click the link that we put up in the header of this live feed. And you're going to get an email. We'll send those out to you. Hopefully, either we're sending them out now or I'm going to send them out when we're done. But we're going to send you out an email with some of the secrets that I have for creating solutions for transforming, that's not a word, for transforming lousy locations. I hope you can hear Michael laughing at me. This is really hard. I'm like talking to a camera on a phone and my husband's laughing at me. But that email is all about transforming lousy locations when you're shooting, and I'm really excited to share that content with you. So sign up for that, you'll get an email, and then reply to that email with any questions you have, and I'll be in touch as soon as I can. So I'm going to go feed a baby who's getting a little cranky. I can hear her all the way back in the bedroom. And thank you so much for tuning in, and maybe next time we get to be outside, it won't be so cold and windy. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Stay safe in the hurricanes.
Yeah, stay safe.